Great to see many familiar faces and that you're in Lund this time. I really appreciate, and thanks for coming, all of you. It's specifically enthusiastic about talking about Immunovia today because not because we're in Lund only, but because we are, of course, going to talk about our main project, the pancreas cancer test going to market, and that's what we're going to start with. But also that we have now taken steps to utilize the strength of the IMMray platform into other areas. So we will talk about the autoimmunity progress, which is an extremely exciting opportunity that we are now taking forward. And we will also dive into some other pipeline activities, which is very, very interesting. So let's start with the most important thing we do, and that is to take the pancreas test to market. And all of these three things, taking the test to market and expanding the portfolio of new tests, are dependent on that the platform is stable and robust and in place, and it is. We have, in production, increased the productivity. It is reproducible, the precision is high. We have doubled the capacity lately. And we are introducing new extended facilities only in 1 month, so we enable even further expansion if it's possible. We are working on storage possibilities so that the product is stable over time, and this has been achieved. And this is a foundation for all of these things, going to market with the pancreas, going for new products. When it comes to using the test in the testing situation in the clinical laboratory, we have taken the platform and industrialized it, as I've been writing in the quarterly report. And we now have very low technical variations from day to day and the requirements that's needed. So the platform is in place. Now the machine will be used for pancreas test to market and for other exciting tests we will talk about today. We have lately, this summer, got our initial very, very strong results from the first retrospective studies in the pancreas cancer published in Journal of Clinical Oncology. This is one of the highest ranked scientific journals in the world. This is very important for the commercialization because having this as a tool convinces the most important buyers, the pancreologists, the key experts, the clinicians, that there is a solid foundation to the product when it's available. So the milestones going to market and taking it there, all the heavy lifting work on the development side to the very far left, many studies on the academia, the big ones now published in Journal of Clinical Oncology, has been done. We know that we have to do this optimization study. It's ongoing. We will be done with it during Q1, and then we are into the 3 last regulatory steps again and back on track for the introduction during the second half of 2019. These are the 3 steps. You do a signature test study, which is fairly large, during the spring and summer, and then finish off with 2 smaller needed studies, verification study on a locked product, no changes allowed, so whatsoever on known samples, and finishing off with a validation study on blinded samples. This is a standard way to bring any diagnostic market, and this is the steps you will follow during the future towards the sales start in the second half of 2019. Sorry, let's talk about the commercial expansion. What do we do on the commercial side? We work hard with awareness and lead generation to the left here on this slide. And we work very closely with the patient organizations. They do meetings, which they call walks, in every major city in the US, and we participate in them. Why do we do that? We do it because we want to create the red last line there, lists of patients or risk persons that want to get the test as soon as it's available. So we are building the buyer, so to say, list during this, and we create awareness. We are participating in all conferences where the clinicians that will take the decisions to use the test are present and work with them. We know them all by now. We do email marketing, we do educational activities, and we are extending our very large key opinion leader network for the launch. So that's one very important aspect that we're working on right now and all the way through to launch and beyond. Then the middle part is crucial in diagnostics, building up the sales operations. That is having systems in place to send the bills to the right place. This has to be in place, and it's rather complex, specifically in US, but we have hired experts from other companies that have done this before, and that's being put in place, so it will be ready and up and running at the right time. Sample logistics is another area to get the blood samples from the buying clinician to our laboratory in a most efficient way and cost-efficient way is being built up, and of course, customer support as well. When it comes to sales staff, and that's the obvious one that everybody thinks about, we have engaged a top-level senior sales leader for US. I will describe him in a second on the next slide, and made up the structure, how the sales force will be put in place step by step to fit perfectly with the launch time. So the person who is now accountable here for building up the US sales team is called Mike Pettigrew. He has 30 years experience in the life science business. Last 10 years, he was the head of sales for Thermo Fisher Scientific with a staff of 500-600 salespeople. So he has a strong experience building up new products, introducing new products and driving sales teams. So we're very happy going forward, as we have done the whole time, to get in really seasoned people on the key positions. So an example what we do, we look through each structure. Here's from the east part of US. We map up which are the key performing hospitals in the gastro area that are the target customers, and list up which ones should be targeted in which order and so forth. We have put our lab in place, which is just outside Boston, in a place where many other life science companies are, called Marlborough. That lab is in place and will be ready to deliver as soon as the product is ready. So when it comes to the prospective studies, we run 3 of them, as most of you know. One, PanFAM-1, covering the people who have a familiar or hereditary predisposition to get the cancer. And here, the study now covers many centers in the US. We recently added one in Canada, the major one in Canada, UK with UCL, Spain, and Sweden. So this is a study that is complex because there are many sites, but it's important because the ones leading these centers are the ones that have regular visits from risk patients already using imaging as they have a tool. So you get the right patients there, and the people running them are the strong key opinion leaders that set the scene. So it's very important for commercial reasons to run this one, as well as for the results. Pandia, we have for the diabetic risk group, people over 50 who have got the first diagnosis of diabetes. And there we have the Swedish part covering up to 6,000 patients running very well with collection of samples. Same for PanSym, which is run in UK with UCL. And these studies, all of them run in 2 phases, as I have on the bottom of this slide. First one is called observational phase. That's when you take the blood sample of the patients and use current standard for the diagnosis, which is imaging. But you just collect the samples, and when the enough samples are there, we do an interim analysis and run them all at once, comparing the results with the current standard. And that is to get the ethical approval to move over to an interventional phase where the clinician actually uses the result to decide whether the person should have a thorough investigation or not. This is a good structure because that means that the impact of the delay we had on the introduction does not impact these studies really, except for the PanSym, where the interim pilot that we had planned this now will come in 19 instead. But so that's the structure. They are running as planned and moving forward. So the financial targets remain. We are focusing on reaching 250 to 300 million Swedish on the self-pay period before we have a full reimbursement in 2022. And once we got the reimbursement, and 2 years later, our ambition and goal and target is to reach 800 to 1 billion Swedish crowns. So let's move over to talk about a new exciting field that we recently have shown good results and decided on our strategy, which product to go forward with first in the autoimmune field. The autoimmune field is very large, many diseases, many problems, but we have decided to go for rheumatoid arthritis. And this is based on the results that we provided during the last years. First, we had this differential study, 2017, that showed that we could pick out one disease, SLE, versus a mix of the other ones, or RA, rheumatoid arthritis, versus the other ones. This is important because when patients come to the clinicians, they may have one of these or other diseases that have similar symptoms. So we had a proof that our technology was strong enough to be able to differentiate between similar diseases in a sense. Second result we got this year, and that was specifically with rheumatoid arthritis, where we showed that it's possible for us to find the patients that test negative to today's 2 current golden standard tests. And we'll talk more about that. There is 2 tests, single marker on the market, and there's a major clinical problem, which we'll discuss now, that for a large portion of the patients today, these 2 say that you do not have RA in spite that you're having it. So today's rheumatoid arthritis way to diagnose them, the guidelines that are same in US and Europe. The ACR is the American organization setting the guidelines, and the EULAR at the top is the European. They have a common criteria how today's diagnosis is done. First, step 1, you look at how many of your joints are affected, okay? Because rheumatoid arthritis destroys your joints. And if you the more you have, the more points you get here. And then you look at step 2, the result of these 2 tests that are on the market. If they are both negative, saying that you have not RA, you get 0 points, obviously. The problem, of course, comes that the test doesn't work as it should. Then they look upon the third one is you have an acute inflammation or not, and then how long time has you had pain, basically. If you score more than 6 points, then you get the diagnosis of rheumatoid arthritis. So what happens if you look upon the right here first, which is where patients end up today when they have established rheumatoid arthritis, then they have come far enough and meet the rheumatologist that sets this one and uses this standard. So in advanced RA, 25 to 30% test negative for today's golden standards. They get 0 points, so to say. That means that many of them do not get the diagnosis because the test says you don't have it. That's a problem, an immediate problem to solve. But then it's even more important is that, like the cancer side, rheumatoid arthritis moves towards early detection. There are healthcare reforms going on right now in the healthcare systems in Europe. In Holland it's been implemented, in Sweden, in Germany, in Scotland for some reason, and other countries are following, including US. And that is to try to move the diagnosis as early as possible. If you can diagnose RA early, you can, with current medication, halt or delay the destruction of joints. And that's very important because the onset of the disease is normally between 40 and 60 in your most productive years, I would say. And then after 10 years after onset, 50% cannot have a full-time job anymore. This is extremely costly for society. If you can find it early, you can halt the disease progression. That's why the healthcare systems are moving to early detection. The problem today is that today's tests, you see, that are giving the wrong result in 25% of the cases in advanced RA, in early stage, it gives the wrong answer in 80% of the cases. It cannot be used really for early detection. That's why it's a major commercial opportunity to come up with a tool that actually works for early detection of RA. As the healthcare is moving that way anyway, we don't have to force a reform which would be impossible in healthcare. We are tagging on to one that's already started. Okay, so our focus is there is an immediate need in the for the rheumatologists to have a tool to get the right answer for the ones in advanced stage. And as I said, the whole healthcare system is moving to early RA detection, where it won't be possible without a new tool. Because what will happen is they have to refer everyone to their rheumatologist, and they will be full with people who actually don't have it. Looking at this, we see a total test opportunity of somewhere between 3 and 4 million tests per year for this product. Very exciting, fantastic opportunity, and that's what we're going for first in the autoimmunity field. Then there are many other opportunities in this area as well, beyond this one, but this is our first target. So that's what I want to say. So what do we need to do? We have done the first studies, as we talked about. Next step is to do a larger study, really reflecting this clinical situation that I described here. That means that we will have samples from people who have symptoms like RA, but not RA, and see that we can use the tools that we developed on first and optimize them to differentiate or find the ones who actually have RA versus the ones who have symptoms, some other disease or state that looks like RA. That is what the clinicians need to really solve this problem we talked about there. And that's what we will do now and be ready with during 2019. Then, when that is successful, we do the standard product development, as we talked about before, test study, verification, validation, introduction. So that's the way forward on the RA side. Next milestones, there will be milestones going closely like this. All right, and then finally, one more thing that somebody said. I would like to introduce our, because you have all the time heard me, but we have great talent in our company, and we have a very strong leader of our business development activities, Mr. Henrik Winter, Senior Vice President of Business Development in Immunovia. He has been leading the efforts working with pharma, and we'll talk to you about that.
Yes, thank you much. There you go. Okay, so I'm going to talk about our activities within lung cancer. And lung cancer is a very interesting field from both a business perspective, but certainly also when it relates to our technology. So business perspective, lung cancer is the second most common cancer disease. And it's the most, or the deadliest cancer disease we actually have. It's a cancer type that is typically diagnosed very late. So 85% of all lung cancer patients are diagnosed in what we call stage 4. There are 4 stages in lung cancer, or in most cancers. So stage 4 is really late. And if you are actually diagnosed at stage 4, your likelihood of surviving 5 years is only 1%. Whereas if you diagnose it early on in stage 1, the likelihood of 5 years survival is 60%. So it's a very important area from a business perspective. And then from an Immunovia perspective and our technology, the IMMray technology, that technology can actually offer some really special features that are very advantageous to both patients, payers, and pharma. There are 3 unique features in the IMMray technology. Number 1 is we're testing on blood. So when you test on blood, you don't have to do biopsies, which are invasive, require resources, expensive. We can do it on blood. That is very, very important, and it's very attractive. Secondly, all cancers, and especially also within lung cancer, are very complex diseases. And you know that cancer is always trying to avoid treatment. It's trying to find different ways to survive and actually, in the end, kill the patient. So it's a very complex disease, and thereby it doesn't make sense just to try and diagnose cancer based on a single biomarker. You need to look for several biomarkers that are involved in different pathways used by the cancer. This is also the IMMray technology. We do multiplexing. We detect several biomarkers at the same time. And then the last very important thing is the panel of biomarkers you have. It needs to be biomarkers that can actually do the work of early diagnosis or differentiate between a responder and non-responder. And that is something that has been developed over years in Immunovia. And therefore, we have, the advantages for patients, payer, and pharma, that we have a technology that can actually do early diagnosis, avoid being, in invasive testing, and we can actually help pharma do studies, effective clinical studies that can differentiate between responders and non-responders. So we undertook the first study in collaboration with a top 10 pharma partner, looked into lung cancer. The first study we undertook here was more for the pharma partner to see that our technology actually works. And therefore, we combined the study, want to show it works technology-wise, and we also wanted to show that we can actually come up with a signature, a biomarker signature that can differentiate between being a cancer patient, lung cancer patient, and being healthy. And we did that with some really impressive results. I don't know if you've seen, probably have seen these curves from Mats earlier on, what we call the rock curves and area under curve. It's really a matter of getting as close to 1.0 as possible. It's not possible to get to 1.0, but if you get as close as we are here, you are in a really, really good shape. You actually have a technology that is really, really strong at differentiating between being healthy and diseased. You would normally say that if you are at 0.6 to 0.7, it's poor. If you are from 0.7 to 0.8, it's fair. If you are from 0.8 to 0.9, it's good. If you're above 0.9, it's excellent. And we are actually at 0.96. So a very, very strong technology we have here. Pharma was happy with the results, and we now continue our collaboration. Ultimately, of course, we want to do the companion diagnostic. We want to develop the test that can actually help pharma differentiate between being a responder and a non-responder to their drug. That is going to help pharma significantly in selecting the right patients for the right treatment. But we also want to pursue the early diagnosis of lung cancer. And I alluded to the numbers before about survival rates. Of course, in US, they couldn't accept the fact that you only have a very poor survival rate, and therefore they were trying to, or they have developed a technology that can actually screen and look for early detection of lung cancer. They have what they call the spiral CT. That's a low dosage CT scan they do. And it actually reduced the lung cancer mortality by 20%, which is pretty impressive. 20% reduction in mortality or death. The thing is that the test has a really high number of false positive patients. So patients that have to undergo additional testing, invasive testing and what have you, but really not have any need of that because they are false positive. So we want to develop a test that can actually differentiate. Initially, we want to develop a test that can differentiate those being false positive and actually truly positive. And we have started these retrospective studies, or not started, sorry, we have started discussing how to get access to the correct samples and then, establishing our own signature that will be able to differentiate between being a false versus true positive patient. So these are the activities right now. With regard to the companion diagnostic, we have over the last 2 months developed a panel of new additional biomarkers that fits right into the pharma portfolio, you could say. Those are biomarkers that are pursued by pharma, the therapeutic targets, and we're going to use those, of course, to help differentiate between being a responder, non-responder to a specific therapeutic. Thank you.
Great.
So we have 3 fantastic projects going on. Main focus is the pancreatic cancer, of course, must go to market, will go to market 2019, second half. Huge potential, as we talked about. The RA test with autoimmunity addresses a 3 to 4 million test per year market possibility, tags on to a trend in healthcare that is reform that's happening and is in need of such a solution. And lung cancer is a cancer that is much larger than pancreas cancer and in need of solutions, both for early detection, but also many companies, including the one we work with on the pharma side, have a need for finding technologies that can differentiate between responders and non-responders. Only the early diagnosis system in US screening, and there are 6.8 million people eligible to that test. They don't have them all in the screening, but there are 6.8 million people eligible. You can imagine if 25% every test positive in spite of having cancer, what that does to the costs of the follow-up. They really need a solution there. So we are working 3 extremely exciting activities and close to market with the pancreas one.
Great.
That's the summary.
Thanks a lot, Mats. And